Welcome to Radiant in Real Life. I'm your host, Beth Medley, and we are a community of women focused on becoming radiant in life, leadership, and the pursuit of Jesus. I'm so excited you're here. Welcome back. I'm so excited to chat with you guys today. I had this experience actually earlier this morning. I was driving in the car and I had Fear Is Not My Future on, and I just had my arms wide open, and yes, I had one hand on the wheel, but I was driving down the road, headed to an appointment, and I started thinking about all of the ways that worship is good for our body and how it can actually heal our trauma somatically, in our body. So we talk a lot about our spiritual realities when it comes to worship. What does this do for our spirits? Why is it good for us? In Psalm 100, it talks about, we enter his court with praise. And so we know that we enter the presence of God in worship. And there are a lot of different ways of worshiping. If you go to different types of churches and different denominations, we sometimes even maybe don't think about worship spiritually enough. In some places, it turns into kind of a checkbox of something that we just do as part of our traditions or part of what we do on Sundays. And then I actually had this experience. I grew up Baptist, and there might have been a hand raise here or there. And then I actually had an experience where I was part of more of a more charismatic church, and I felt so much freedom in being able to worship the Lord in whatever way I felt in that moment, and not feeling judged or for moving or bowing down, or however it was that I felt like the Lord was leading me to be in worship with him. And even worship via dance is something that's very near and dear to my heart. So this is kind of my experience with, and side note, worship is a complete lifestyle. So when we talk about worship, on a bigger scale, everything that you do in your life can be worship, because it's the way that you do it, whether you're wiping a baby's mouth, sweeping up Cheerios, meeting with a client, whatever you're doing, even just spending time with your spouse can be done in a worshipful way. But particularly today, we're talking about with music. So back to our conversation, I think that we kind of know about the need to worship because we talk about it. It's been in biblical tradition for thousands of years. Literally, Miriam led the Israelites out of Egypt with worship, with tambourines and with dance. All of the women, as they were leaving the Red Sea, she's leading them in worship. So this has been something that's been happening for thousands of years, but I don't know that we really understand all of the things that it does for us. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about neurologically what's happening in our body when we engage with the kingdom. Because when the kingdom comes near in my heart and in my mind, it affects my body as well. Just like when and I don't know if we've talked about this or not yet, but when we renew our mind, it's actually, there's a physical thing happening in my brain where I'm building new neural pathways to God thoughts, or to think like God. We start seeing things in new ways. So there's actually a physical thing happening in my brain when I start renewing my mind and having new thoughts. So I want to talk to you about several things that came to mind as my arms were wide open and I was driving down Wellburn Street, just one arm. I started thinking about all the things that are so good that is happening in this moment. So the first thing I want to talk to you about in this somatic experience, the feelings in your body that are happening when you're worshiping, is really the fact that your muscles are contracting. When you're in worship, especially worship through dance or any kind of movement, you're standing, you're bowing, you're moving your body, even swaying is so good for our nervous system. What happens is we kind of have these two nervous systems, these two sets of sides of our nervous system. We have a parasympathetic nervous system and we have our sympathetic nervous system. So our parasympathetic nervous system is really where we are at peace. That's going to be like where we have calm and where we're regulated. This is our resting state. And our sympathetic nervous system is more when we're activated. So if you have a hard time clenching your jaw all the time, or your body is like just really tight, you probably live in your sympathetic nervous system a lot. And that's a trauma response. Like that is a natural thing that your body has learned to do to keep it safe. It has learned to keep you safe, that it needs to be on constant guard. So as we're healing the trauma that is in our body, we want to learn how to live more in this parasympathetic state. And the best thing about our brain is that it's plastic. Like it can be changed and molded. You don't have to be stuck with what you have because of the experiences you've had in your life that someone else has done to you or that you've done to yourself. Like you don't have to stay that way. And so worship is an incredible tool to be able to mold your nervous system to live in that parasympathetic state. So one of those things, like we talked about, is muscles contracting. So if you Google happy molecules, it's kind of been pretty popular lately. There are actually hormones that are released in our bodies only when our muscles contract. It's part of the reason why exercise is so important for us, why movement is so important for us. And if you talk to any therapist that has any type of like touch on somatic experiences, which we know that trauma is held in our body, probably the most popular book on that would be The Body Keeps the Score, but there's a lot of them. Moving your body releases trauma. So shaking your body or just going on a walk, all those things are going to actually contract your muscles and release happy molecules, release these hormones into your body that actually make you feel in your body joyful. It's an experience that we have that's in our body. And why would we not, if God gave us a body, why would we not want to experience both the spiritual and the physical side of everything that he has for us? Like, why would I negate that? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want you to forget that your body is important and it's a gift from the Lord. So another thing that happens when we're in worship that is so healing is when we sing or hum, the vocal cords actually vibrating activate the vagus nerve. So when we're wanting to talk about trauma healing or grounding or getting back in our bodies, if we're feeling disassociated or we're feeling out of control, we want to activate that vagus nerve, and singing actually activates that vagus nerve. So the more time we can spend with that activated, it's going to pull us back into that parasympathetic nervous system. So singing is a huge thing that if you have a kid that hums to themselves a lot or sings, they're actually self-soothing. They're self-soothing. So it's a tool that the Lord gave us, and we use it. It's so amazing. Children tap into the tools that the Lord gives us in our body so much more readily than we do as adults, because they feel free and unjudged to be able to do these things. But if I just am walking around my office, people walk by my office and I'm sure they hear me singing and I don't know what people think about me, but it is how I have to live my life, okay? So I want you to feel free to be able to do these things and know that they're good for you. Another thing that happens when we're in worship and if we're singing loudly, we're going to be deep breathing. And this one, everybody knows it's supposed to be good for you, and we automatically do it almost all the time. Everyone pretty much automatically does this when they're angry. If you're trying to regulate your response, you take a big deep breath, right? And sometimes that can be like a trigger if someone takes a big deep breath in front of you, because if you had a parent that was always mad and was like, every time you said anything, you can have like a major shame response when somebody does this. So just be warned. But I want you to remember that deep breathing, again, it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. And a cool thing about deep breathing, if we do deep breathing for 10 minutes a day for 10 days in a row. Like you can't skip it, 10 days in a row. On the 11th day, it actually starts rewiring your brain. Like your body will start learning that even before you notice that you're stressed, your body will recognize that you're stressed. It'll recognize the hormones rising in your body, and your body will start deep breathing on its own without you initiating anything yourself. So deep breathing is another thing that happens in worship that activates your vagus nerve and pulls you into your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, 2 more, y'all, and then I promise we'll be done. Speaking truth over ourselves. Speaking truth over ourselves. And I know that y'all probably know this is a good thing spiritually, but actually physically, when we speak out loud a thing, whether it's good or bad, our ear is going to hear that, and our brain is what actually processes whether it's true or not. Like your ear is not judgmental. Like your brain is the thing that's processing whether it's true or not. So the more that you can hear truth, the more that you can speak that out loud and hear it through your ears, the more your brain is going to be formed to believe that truth. The more that I say out loud, death is not the end, you are, the more I believe that reality, and the easier it is for me to cope with the grief of losing my mom. The more that I say sickness is not my story out loud, I can believe that that's the truth. Even if I'm experiencing sickness, that is not the thing that my brain will focus on, because the more that I say that out loud, the more that my brain is going to believe that that's not the thing I need to focus on. It's the fact that God is at the end of this, right? When I say hello peace, hello joy, hello love, I'm welcoming those things into my life, and I'm speaking out that they are there. So my brain is processing. There is peace, joy, and love all around me. So you want to harness your nervous system as we are speaking these things out that are true over ourselves, that God is faithful, that He's not going to leave you here, that He loves you. You are feeding your brain exactly what it needs to be able to be renewed. So lastly, and this is maybe the most controversial because like scientifically, when we are in worship and our bodies are big, we have our arms extended, raised up, we actually make our bodies bigger. And there's a phenomenon called power poses. And power poses actually, again, release hormones into our body. Typically, people who are doing power poses a certain amount of time every day tend to take more risks. And if we stay small or hunched over, that's going to also affect the way that we move about our day. It'll make us feel unmotivated. And when I think about that from an emotional standpoint, many of us learned how to make ourselves small and how to not have needs because we didn't want to worry other people or we didn't want to inconvenience other people. And that's not what the Lord has for you. Like, we don't want to make our voice small because God gave you a voice so it could be heard. So I want you to make yourself bigger, stand in these power poses and see what it does for your body and for your mind. When you move your body out in this way, when you stand like Superman, when you have your arms out and you're in these big poses, make your stance wide with your feet, make yourself bigger, and it actually changes the chemical makeup of your body, which changes your mind. It changes your mind. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn this podcast off when this is done. And I want you to pick your favorite worship song. And if you don't have a favorite worship song, why don't we pick Fear Is Not Your Future? It's pretty popular right now. I love Brandon Lake. Pull that up. And I want you to just take some time to open your arms, open your heart, breathe deeply, invite in the Lord, sing out loud, and see how you feel after the end of that song. I can't wait to see what it does for you. Thank you for listening to our episode today. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. So I have one last question before you go. How are you going to radiate this week? In life, in leadership, or in your pursuit of Jesus?